by Erie there. What the?
Cool Road?
Cool Road.
Cool Road, yeah.
And I was driving a different car. I beat him in the heat race. I beat him in the semifinal. I beat him in the feature. He beat me in the Australian Pursuit. And I was up there collecting my money. And him and his wife were right behind me. And I give him the wrong number of car. And his wife says, that son of a gun don't even know what the hell car he's driving. And I spun him out in the feature. And then he sat there in the infield. I come around. It looked like he could move. Next time I come around, he was moving there. Oh boy.
Here he comes.
Here I go. But he didn't bother me. And I drove for George Barnhart out of Erie. And I think Tommy, I think I took the ride from Tommy.
Oh, really?
And Tommy was at the racetrack a few weeks later, and he had his bag with him. George says, Tommy's looking for a ride, and he was going to the late models. And he says, you're going for a ride. Because that's what Tommy wants. He wants to drive a car. And he says, he'll get you. And he'll be happy. It'll be all over with.
You just wanted to even the score.
Well, I didn't spin him out. Oh, yeah, I did that right out there. Yeah, I see him put his suit on. I knew he had a ride, and I see what car he was in. He missed me the first time, but he didn't miss me the second time. George says, he's all right now. He did what he wanted to do. That's all over. He won't bother you anymore.
Was that his reputation as the guy that would you'd least likely want to be one-on-one around 11?
Yes, if you hit Tommy Diller, there's a pretty good chance he would get hit back. And he could do it.
Was he that good?
Yes, he was very good.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he could. Well, he used to ride motorcycles. He was very good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd lay in the back of the field for the whole race to the last lap, and he passed the whole field the last lap.
Yeah.
Just blow him off.
Yeah. When you started racing long time ago, John, what possessed you to do that? Was that in your family, John? Was that part of...
No. But, well, I think maybe my father had passed away at the time I raced. He came from England, so he wasn't into racing.
Mm-hmm.
He liked sports. But no, it was... Well, we had an old 31 Chevy car when I was 12, 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And the ignition key went to heck in it. So they put a push-pull switch in it. And my parents would leave on a Sunday and go for a ride with somebody. So I couldn't take the key out of it.
Right.
So I just turned that switch on and go up and down the road.
Somebody had to do it.
Right. So I just like that. I guess you like doing anything that you can do better than most people. And I think everybody born into this world, there's something, if they get to that, they can do it better than anybody else.
Right.
I don't care what it is. Maybe they're an artist or a musician or a race car driver.
John, you were a good athlete in high school, we've been hearing. Is that true?
Well,
Played a lot of sports when you were in high school?
That's probably what kept me in school, playing sports.
As opposed to your academic career?
Well, I didn't do as good as I should in my academic career because I had a very high IQ, as they told me when I went in the Army.
Right.
So I didn't work at it very hard.
You started off kind of doing jalopy stuff
Yes.
first. And I know we talked about rollerball.
Yes.
What other race tracks did you drive at?
Sherman.
Sherman?
I was on High Point man at Sherman and Rollerball and 5 Point all in 1 year.
Wow.
I raced at 28 different tracks altogether.
My gosh.
And I was competitive at most of them except Sharon. I could not get around Sharon. I get the car set up, I get around one corner, I couldn't get around the other corner.
Yeah. Now, if you had that kind of success at that early age, did you making a living at that, John? Was that?
No, but I made real good money at it at times. 3 years I made money enough to buy a new car.
Great.
But the cars were quite a lot cheaper back then.
Yeah. Ultimately, you decided at some point to get out of the jalopy business and into the late model business.
Well,
What caused you to do that?
my dream was to race at State Line and Erie's with who I thought were the best drivers. I think that State Line had some of the best cars and drivers of any of the tracks around there, because their cars that would finish third and fourth at State Line could go someplace else and win the race.
Who were the guys you were trying to play with? You know, you just said you wanted to go to State Line to race with the best. Who were the best? Who were the names you were looking at?
Well, I guess the first name would be Bobby Snars, because he won more than anybody else. But I thought myself that 9/16
Layfield.
I thought he was about the best of them. And I called it. It was on the radio one day, and they were asking who were the best drivers. And I called it, and I told them Layfield, and they agreed with me.
Right. Now, when you raced, Dean wasn't. He died. Was he?
I didn't race him in the late model class.
Yeah. Did you race him in the jalopy race or other races?
I might have a couple of times.
Right. Well, but he had a. Why was he so good? What was his reputation like?
Well, we always laughed about it. His right front fender was cast iron. He laid that right front fender into a car, and he was going by him.
Yeah. So you knew you knew he was coming by, or when he did.
Yeah, he was. And I don't really think that he had the very best equipment, so he got all there was out of it.
So we mentioned Layfield, Schnars. Who else would be in that top tier of racers?
Well, Squirt Johns,
Right.
and I think at the last meeting I told you that Ronnie Blackmare
Right.
was the cleanest winning driver.
Right.
And that next weekend he brought me up a 30-pack of beer.
Did he really?
Yes, and I said, well, that's something you said. I said, what the heck did I say? I can't remember. I'd say it again. He said, you ain't getting another one. Then when I got the movie, then I remembered what I'd said. And in my opinion, he was that.
Yeah.
He was real good, and he was real clean. When he was behind you, you knew you made one little slip, and he was going by.
Right.
But he'd go by clean.
Yeah. Who would not go by clean, other than Tom Dill?
Dizzy Eads.
Dizzy Eads? Is that right?
And then there was a guy out of Harbor Creek. He had it was a tank, but he had a real husky engine in it. And he could run pretty fast, but it weighed more than any of the other cars. And him, if you was going by him, you want to touch him just a little bit, just to let him know you're there.
Right.
But don't hit him very hard, because you're going to have a wreck.
1965 was your rookie year at State Line, and you were the point champion at both State Line and Erie.
Yes,
Why was that? What was unique about you had going on? What was going on that year?
I drove for Russ and Barry Thompson. Russ was the father, the owner of it. And Barry was a real workhorse. There wasn't anything I asked for on the car. I couldn't ask for a new engine or nothing, but a little adjustment here and there. He would do just whatever I asked, and so I had a lot of confidence in the car. I drove a Sportsman for him the year before, and I knew the car would be in tip-top shape. It would handle good, and it would run good. And I knew if I did something to it in the heat race, messed it up, they would fix it by the feature time. It would be a first-class car, and I won the first feature. I ran at Erie, and that was the only one I won. And I won one towards the end of the year at State Line, but I was third most of the time. And that was starting at the back of the pack. And I think that, to me, the racing was a lot better when they started the fast cars at the back of the pack. Because you see action all night long.
Right.
Guys trying to... I was High Point man, and I won 2 features all year.
Right. Interesting. That is interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Russ Thompson, he was in Sugar Grove, right?
Right.
Right. And we're trying to catch up with him, right? Did he have other cars other than your car number 39?
Well, the first year I drove for him, that was with a Sportsman. He had a car the year before, and then the next year he was going to have 2 of them. And Tony White, who I was working with at the time, Tony White used to work with Bobby Snars, he says, Russ is looking for another driver. So I didn't get down and see him that weekend because the race hadn't started yet. But I went down the next week. The week before, I was gone out and I got in a fight and I got a black eye. I didn't want to get down to see. First time I ever seen a man in my life have a big shiner.
Right.
So I didn't go that week. So I went the next week. He says, I wish you'd have come down here before that. I got a driver, but he said he's been doing everything but sleeping with me. But I don't think he can handle the car. And I said, what's the handle? A 6-cylinder car? They throw the green flag, you put your foot to the floor. They throw the checkered flag, you lift your foot back up. Well, not my car. Like I said, I'll give this guy 4 weeks to see if he can handle it. 4th week was up. I'm sitting there watching the race, and he's way out front in the feature. This is it. Have a flat tire, hit somebody, do something. Don't win the feature. He did real easy. So I went to the track the next night. I think my ride was gone. And some guy said, Russ Thompson's looking for you. So I went over and he said, you want to drive my car? Oh, the guy wins with it the night before. And yeah. And that's just about what I did with it. I put my foot to the floor when they dropped the green flag. I'd fishtail coming off the corner, but every time I'd fishtail, there was a hole. It was just luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And so that.
But that's a technique of driving. I mean, you did it one way. Guys like, I guess, Squirt Johns would sort of drive differently, right? Sort of along the inside.
Well, Squirt strictly run inside, yes. But I just was showing that I could put my foot to the floor and I could get around the track.
Yeah.
But I was about half losing it in every corner.
Yeah.
But when I lost it just luckily where the opening was.
Yeah. So, my recollection is you were just an exciting racer to watch. And spectators liked the Johnny Whitehead.
Well, I had to start at the back of the pack because we had a fast car with high points.
Yeah.
So I when they dropped the flag, I took off as fast as I could. And that at State Line was where everybody did. I went to Ohio and ran, and I'd start last, and in 5 laps I'd be running in the top 5.
Right.
They'd just ride her off for 2 or 3 laps. They wouldn't really get right at racing for first few laps. And at State Line, if you didn't take off when they dropped that green flag, you was going to get run over because the guy behind you was taking off. I said earlier, I think they was some of the better cars and the better drivers at State Line and Erie of any of the tracks around here.
Was that partly because of the money they were offering?
They partially, but they just had people that was really into building good cars,
Right.
and the drivers. Just about every one of them was quite aggressive.
Right. You started in 1966, Flying Farmer, number 39. How long did you race, John, at State Line? What was your career length?
Well, I won the point championship in '66
Right.
at State Line too. I guess I drove for Russ until about 70. We had a fast car, but it was breaking down quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we were leading the points at Erie, but we wasn't. Russ hired me to finish in the top 5.
Right.
And I was finishing like 7th and something. But I was finishing every race.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I made some mistakes and had to come back from a spin out or something to get to 7th. And I drove for 36 years.
36 years.
Over a period of 39 years.
Wow.
I was in the Army a couple of years.
We always ask the question of, at one morning, did you kind of wake up and say, I've had enough of this? Was there a moment like that?
Yes, that's what it boiled down to. I was running down to Bradford, and I was leading the points by quite a little bit. But we weren't running very good at State Line.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody hit the fence early in the race, and I thought there was going to be an accident, and I backed out of it. And 2 or 3 cars went by me.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few laps later, there was another accident. I seen the dust fly, and I said, last time I backed off for that, and they passed me. As I come out of the dust, there's that, can't think of his name now, right crossways of the track. And I was headed right for his door, wide open. Well, I got her slowed down and slowed down a little bit. So I hit him just in the front end. I didn't hit him right in the door. That looked kind of scary to me.
Right.
For him. I just can't think of his name now. And it hurt the car a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy I drove for at the time, it would take him a while to fix the car.
Right.
And I was going up to the garage every weekend, and we weren't getting along too good. Sometimes I'd spend all day up to the garage, and we wouldn't even speak to each other.
Oh, gosh.
So that wasn't much fun anymore.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't giving me just what I wanted all the time. And a driver has to have faith in himself and faith in his race car. And I didn't have it.
Oh, you were always known as the Flying Farmer, and
Pretty much.
that was why was that?
I was a dairy farmer.
So a dairy
I
farmer?
had 39 cows when I first started driving for Russ Thompson.
Is that right?
Right.
I never heard that story before. John, there was a guy named the Flying Farmer before you arrived
Yes,
on the scene.
yes.
Do you know about that man?
I used to play cards with the guy that owned the car. He was a veterinarian, I believe. And I can't think of the guy. I never raced him.
Yeah, the guy I'm thinking about is named Al Stearns.
No.
He was
no.
from South Dayton. And
Oh, was that else?
yeah, and he was called
there was
he
a-
was called the Flying Farmer
Well,
back
maybe
when
that's right.
back when State Line first opened up. You
Yeah,
were still
yeah.
up to Rollable and the other places, but
Yeah.
Al Stearns raced up at State Line the
Oh.
first few years, and they called him a Flying Farmer because,
Oh.
like you, he owned a dairy farm.
Yeah, yeah.
As you went through, John, at State Line, we're always interested to know of an incident that would have occurred where you would have said, Greg, the funniest thing that I ever saw that happened at State Line Speedway was, what would Johnny Whitehead say? Or the craziest thing or something.
Well, I think one thing we used to do, Bobby Snars and I, we'd start the tail end of the heat race and we'd both run hard for a few laps, but if you couldn't get up in the money, then we put on a little race to the back of the pack to see who could come in last, and then he'd get to start ahead in the
Oh, really?
semifinal. And that Darn Snars, he'd always wind up, we'd be back and forth.
Yeah.
And one night I said, I'm going to finish behind you. That son of a gun pulled in the pits. The last lap, he still finished behind me.
In the pits. I love it. Now, is that how the starting would work? You know, you'd finish, how you finished in the heats was then you were placed in the semis? And
No, it was basically how you did it. Well, right towards the end, to begin with, it was how you was in the points.
Right.
And then they started doing it how you'd done in the 3 previous races. So if you was high in the points, even though you hadn't done nothing, 3 races, you're still at the back of the pack. But this way, if you'd had 3 bad weeks, you get a decent starting position.
Right, right. How much did Leonard Briggs have discretion as to where to place you in those final races, if any?
Well, right towards the end, when they was doing about the last 3 races, you should have been able to, when you left the track Saturday night, you should know where you would be starting next week.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't always work out that way. But Leonard Briggs would argue with you all night long. I don't think anybody ever won an argument. But he'd stand there and visit with you and argue about your starting position. But now, Franny, he wouldn't argue with you all night long. He'd just say, if you don't like the way I'm running the place, get the heck out of here.
That's a good rep. Isn't that good? Just, I'm listening to you. It sounded like Franny.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no argument.
No, this is my track and this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah, you sound like him. What about, we've had a chance to talk to the Frank brothers. Jerry Frank, what's he mean to a John Whitehead?
Jerry Frank, he was the one that condition the track.
Mhm.
And he was pretty straight guy. I thought you could talk with him,
Mhm.
and he'd visit with you, and you'd give your point of view, and he'd give you his point of view.
Right.
Now his brother,
Don.
yeah, he's never going to see this movie, is he?
No, no.
All right.
Of course not.
If I went up to him complaining about one thing that's doing, he'd agree with me, and you'd come up and tell the opposite. He'd agree with you. You couldn't get an argument with a man. He'd always agree with you.
Yeah, I love the good politician.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, that's terrific. Lloyd Williams.
Well, he wasn't too bad a guy. Leonard was kind of I'd say was the boss of that's who you'd be talking to when he was complaining about something.
Mm-hmm.
And Lloyd didn't get involved too much in that. He didn't get involved with anybody too much.
He was sort of the promotions guy. I know he was the announcer.
Yes. Yeah.
On the track, what were you racing for? What was the dollars and cents? What were the economics of it?
Well, in '65, if you had a current year car, a 25 lap race, you got $475.
Okay.
Now if you had a current year car, I think the purse was 300. You had a current year car, you got 175, and then it dropped at $50 per car if you got a current year car. And most of the cars didn't change a lot from 65 to 66 or whatever, so you just change a few parts on the car, and then you had a current year car.
Meaning that if it was a 1966 race, it was a 1966 model car.
Yes.
Got it.
Maybe it was actually a 65 model car, but you changed the grill or bumper or something.
Yeah.
It made it look like a 65.
Yeah. Nobody looked too long and hard at it?
Well, I think it was Floyd Finale. Bobby Snard, I think, he had to spend just a few bucks to make it a current year car. Look at that son of a gun. He gets an extra $175 and he only spent 50 bucks making a current year car.
Did you race against Billy Layfield? You're back to the
Down to Bradford.
Bradford? Yeah. Did you get a sense over time from 1966 when you started and were the point champion in State Line and Erie, as the years progressed, the technology progressed, and things just got a little more difficult to keep up?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Now it used to be, I'd say back in the old days, you spent all winter long building a car, and you built a good car. You'd have a good race car all summer long. But it got so you could change one bolt and make it you changed 10 bolts on it, and one change would make the car faster. The other 9 would probably make it slower. But yes, they got to be a lot of adjustments into them, and you had to do a lot of what would win you the feature this Saturday night. Bring everything back the same next week, and it wouldn't do good at all.
Right.
And of course you see that now. You see them on the television. Their car isn't fast at all. They go to the pits and they change a little bit on it, and zoom, they go right to the front.
Right.
Now they're getting down real fine on the adjustments. Real fine.
The story you told before I had the camera on, I got to have it retold. and that is the one we just came back from Tom Dill. And Tom Dill said, John Whitehead was perhaps the greatest driver I've ever noticed. Tell that story again here.
Okay. Well, I didn't have a ride. And I went to a racetrack one night, and a guy I used to drive for you, he says, "I got a car over here that needs a driver. You want to drive it?" Probably. And we was probably 100 feet from the car when I noticed it had a whole straight axle front end under it. The springs run crossways to the car. I said, "Oh no, I ain't driving that car." And I went and talked to him. I said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll drive it in the heat race, but I won't guarantee you anything after that." And I don't know what was done to that car. That car had the most traction, forward traction, of any car I ever drove. Oh, God. You could take it right out against the wall and have it backed up into the corner. And if you floorboarded it, you could turn it and go into the pits. And then I got a chance to drive for a fellow from Sherman here that had the High Point car from the year before, and him and his driver got where they weren't seeing eye to eye, and the guy that was driving, he says, "Well, I live right in Sherman. I'd like to drive that car." "Go ahead," he says. "I'm not going to drive it anymore." So then I drove the other car. I'm getting you confused. I'm getting myself confused here. But that one that was a Ford. That's the one I got Tommy a ride in, and you couldn't. The steering wheel didn't amount to a whole lot. You run it by the back wheels mostly, but it would work good that way. And when I got in it, I said, "Everybody tells me there ain't a man alive can drive that car. So if I don't look good, it's the goddamn race car." So I just run her, throw it in the corners, and it would do just about what I asked it to do. Just about.
Yeah.
And it was fast. I think I led 350 lappers that year, and it broke down. And then I won a 100 lapper with it. Yeah. But it just wasn't being real well maintained, but it was fast.
And Tom, having driven that car, walked away saying, "Unbelievable that anybody could drive it." And
well, you just had to drive it like I did. Not worry about where it's going to go until you get into the corner, and then do what you got to do to correct it.
Well, it made you a superstar. What was your biggest win, John? Or was there a couple wins that stand out in your mind?
Well, one that I always said was that wasn't at State Line. That was at Cool Road over there. Mm-hmm. And I was over there just watching the race. And Stan Stevens' cousin had bought one of Piazza's old car, 57 Chevy. Was too old to run at State Line anymore. And he had it over there. There was about 6 or 8 late models there. And then I started 4th, and I took the lead coming off the first turn.
Wow.
But the car worked great for me. It was fast. I ran that car up to Holland and a few places, and it was a competitive car.
Well, that's terrific.
I started 31st at the Roll Bowl one day, and they'd watered the track where he ran.
Right.
But I went down where they didn't water. I went to first in one lap.
Oh my God.
32nd to the lead in one lap.
31st, yeah. They were out there where they'd put the water, spinning their wheels and not go any place. And I went on the dry part of the track.
That's knowing your track. It says here in a little story, you became a familiar name on the Erie State Line circuit when the Thompsons put out a couple of garishly painted machines dubbed the Pink Panthers, number 38 and number 39. What did you think when they rolled out these unbelievable looking machines?
Well, I'd watched the 38 car run the year before.
Mm-hmm.
Willie Wilson drove it. He did good with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they built the other new one, then somebody else drove it for 4 weeks. And I just knew it was a well-built car, and they took real good care of the car. And both cars were competitive.
Why the color?
I didn't remember it was pink. I thought it was kind of reddish. But I think I do remember that article in the paper.
Yeah. The Pink Panthers. Freddie Knapp and you, I guess 38 was that?
No, Willie Wilson drove the other
Okay.
one.
Okay.
And I wouldn't dare say if Freddie Knapp drove the other one the next year. It's possible.
Was it difficult for you to transition from sportsman's class to late model?
No, because they were. Well, when I first changed, the sportsman was built by the Thompsons,
Right.
and then they built the late model, so they handled quite a little alike.
You win the points again, 1966. 1967 didn't have as much success. Was there any reason for that?
Partially luck. Of course, I never realized till I quit racing that I always come in, if I didn't do good, I blamed it on the car.
Mm-hmm.
But so that you bowl or play golf or anything, some nights you can play real good, and you go to the bowling alley, to the golf, feeling great, had a good supper, good night's sleep the night before, and you feel just great, but you can't. No coordination at all. Well, have you seen the pros? One time they can hit a baseball out of the park, and the next night they can't even touch the baseball. So there's nights that you just don't have it, and then there's nights that everything, you have coordination, everything working better. And then there's quite a lot of element of luck in there.
What's the question we should be asking Johnny Whitehead that we haven't asked? The one you've been sitting back and saying, gee, I wonder if they'll ask that question about me and my career at State Line Speedway. And we don't want to, I'm sure there's something we're missing here.
I think you've covered it pretty good, and you know what the public would like to hear.
Well,
And I shouldn't have told you the truth a few times. I should have said something the public would like.
Truth isn't always bad, you know. Tom Dill gave us some stories also.
a lot of his stories aren't going on the camera.
Oh,
There is an editing process.
Yeah, some things.
We do know our audience.
This film is for general audiences.
okay.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not
X-rated.
just, it's not adult.
No, it's not an adult film, John. John, at some point, you were driving for the Thompsons, and then at some point, Jay Plyler started driving that car. What happened in there?
Russ fired me.
Oh, well, that's a pretty good answer.
Well, what he said, I was leading the points in Erie. Like I sat in the stands for 2 weeks before I lost the lead up there. But I had done several times when a car spun in front of me, I thought I could get under them. And Russ said, you know, when they spin out, they're going to come down. And I went, tried to get underneath them, and they were right there, and I had to stop. So he was hired me to finish in the top 3, top 5. And I was finishing like 7th, 8th. After I spun out, I could work my way back up to 7th or 8th. Jay and I got along good. There was no problem. In fact, we had a race at State Line when I was driving the Sportsman, and Jay was driving his car. It was a Ford, and it was a good car. They had a real good car. We were partners, and each had to run at least 35 laps. So Jay was better toward the end of the race, and I was better early in the race. So I ran first. I had a better time than he had. Oh no, well, wait a minute. He blew up his good engine the night before, so he didn't have a good engine in it. That's all he had. He said, "This is the best we got." He said, "I'm sorry." Well, but, I think that if he had his good engine, we'd have been highly competitive. We got 3rd out of it, and he lost a lap because the engine just didn't have it. And Jay was go around the track the 150th lap just as fast to go around. First, he was real steady. He was real good in long races. He wouldn't make very many mistakes. But he just blew up his good engine.
Who did you drive for after you left the Thompson car?
I think I went to George Barnhart in Erie.
Okay.
And we raced out to Conneaut mostly.
Yeah, you raced a lot out to Conneaut.
The car wasn't that competitive at State Line or Erie, I didn't think. And I won't say it was the fastest car at Conneaut, but I don't think there was any faster. It was real fast out there.
Yeah, that's around 1970 or so that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I remember Freddie Knapp used to go out to Conneaut.
Yes.
He was driving for Busink at the time.
That could be.
Am I right on that or not? Maybe not, you know? Maybe not.
Well,
he had a Mustang, I remember, in 1970, and I guess
it might have been.
I thought it was Busink's car, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was Cooney's car.
His name is, there was a guy from that drove Busink's car for quite a while. I almost got it.
Jim Scott?
Jim Scott.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, I was driving this Barnhart's car, and we were doing real good. I had 1/5 place, and the rest were 3rd or better. And Scott ran over a wheel at the Erie track, and it injured him quite a lot. Messed his back up bad. And we were just running Saturday night, and Jim called me. I don't know if I'd drive his car. And it was a fast car, but I couldn't do nothing with it, nothing. And so I called George, and I said, "Are we going to run here?" "Well, not very much, probably." "Well, Jim Scott wants me to drive his car at Erie, and I'll drive your car at Ohio." He says, you drive my car. That's the only car you drive." So I hung up and I told Scotty, I called him back and said, I'll drive your car both nights. No more hung up with him, and Barnhart called me up, well, drive Boozing's car for me. They give a car away to the high pointmen out there. And there was, I think, 10 races left to go. I only had to finish twice in the top 10. I'd have won the car. I think I could have took that Ford out there, and they would have let me take the Ford out there to finish it. But when I called the track, after I talked to Scott, I said, are you going to give anything to the High Point man? Well, he said, we would really like to, but I don't think we can afford it. They'd have told me, well, we're going to give a new car. I'd have probably...
You'd stayed there.
Yeah.
I see. Here's some pictures, John.
Yeah.
Some of those cars we've been talking about.
Yeah. I got a bunch of pictures upstairs, but I thought probably you've got most of them.
Well, not necessarily. We're always anxious to see what you got.
You want to look at the books?
Yeah.